beyond.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So we were hearing from an opposition Labour Party member just there, Owen Smith. Labour seemingly as divided, certainly when it comes to the election question, as the Tories are on this, what is a very important day here in the UK. The pound is pretty weak, down 0.6%, currently trading at 119.97. This prospect of either a no deal or an election, this binary outcome of the voting today and tomorrow, seems to be spooking the markets. We're certainly weaker on cable. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index gains 0.1%. The euro is down 0.2%, trading at 1.09. Other things that we're looking at in the markets, in equity markets, we're also seeing red across the board. The FTSE 100 down 0.1%. The Z DAX drops 0.5%, and the Stock 600 weaker 0.5%. As the US returns from the Labor Day weekend, the S&P 500 E-mini futures are significantly weaker, down 0.8%. Perhaps it's the issue around the US and China, the trade talks, uncertainty about when those trade talks will resume and exactly how. As for other markets, WTI crude down 1.4%, trading at $54.34. Brent crude down almost 1 full percentage point. And gold this morning, money going in to that safe haven, up 0.2%, 1,532 spot 54. I'll just end this look at the markets for you with income 1.47% on benchmark. US 10-year Treasury yields down 2 basis points, negative 73 basis points for German Bund yields. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garrings with more on what's going on around the world.
Good morning, Caroline. A total of 25 bodies have now been found after a diving boat caught fire off Southern California. 9 people are still missing following the blaze off the coast of Santa Cruz yesterday. Authorities say they will continue to search for them, but are prepared for the worst outcome. South Africa has been hit by an outbreak of xenophobic violence in Johannesburg. 50 mainly foreign-owned shops and businesses were looted and torched in the central business district. That was yesterday. The attacks come ahead of the beginning of the African edition of the World Economic Forum in Cape Town, starting tomorrow. And Elton John's glittering performances are celebrated in the new stamp selection. The rock legend features on a new set of Royal Mail stamps to celebrate his contribution to music. He's only the second individual artist to be given such an honour, with David Bowie featuring in 2017. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garrings. This is Bloomberg. Matt, that's Tiny
Leanne.
Dancer.
Yeah, little Elton John there. I do have to say, David Bowie was one of the greats and a Berlin resident. Not sure if everyone knows that. He lived here in Berlin.
But he was London born, so we can claim him
for a long time. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not debating his Britishness. In fact, you'll definitely hear me as a champion for British exceptionalism when it comes to rock music. I mean, the greatest rock musicians in the world, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, are for the most part British.
Yeah, I want to know whether they're actually going to have on these stamps something glittery. I don't think it says Elton John if the stamps don't glitter.
I know, and all his glittery, most flamboyant costumes will be celebrated on these stamps. And remember those amazing glasses he always wears.
Yeah.
So we can just expect the most fabulous stamps to come out on our letters soon.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I didn't ever see Elton John's clothes or his eyewear as really the highlight of what he produces. I have to say, I thought his music was a heck of a lot better than his sense of fashion. But yeah, who am I to judge? Are we going to go over to John Tucker? Because I'd love to hear his thoughts on this stuff. He's getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak in New York. He's certainly of the age to remember Elton John, David Bowie, and all of the great British rock and roll. John Tucker, are you there?
Oh, I am here. I'm waiting for the Ozzy Osbourne stamp.
Oh, yeah. I'm a huge fan of Ozzy, as you probably know.
Oh, the Ozman. You got
Everyone should listen to Black Sabbath. But today we're going to listen to you, John Tucker. What have you got ahead for us?
Well, back from the beach, getting a dose of reality this morning. The bets on a global slowdown growing. We're going to speak to James Bevan, Chief Investment Officer at CCLA Investment Management. A hurricane update. This is a real tough one to track. The east coast of the United States, that remains very vulnerable at this point. We'll go into great detail on that. Wendy Schiller, political science professor at Brown University. She's going to stop by. Election update. Is Joe Biden his own worst enemy? And Donald Trump, how vulnerable is he on the U.S. economy? Busy week for economic reports. We're going to get the big jobs report. That's one of the bright spots in the U.S. economy. And, of course, we'll go down the yellow brick road in the U.K. with the pound hitting the lowest level since 2017. Can you say self-inflicted wounds? Wendell commentary for this morning.
Can you say very affordable tourism? That's the important point, I think, for
I've
US.
just come back from Europe, and it's horrible for us Brits.
For you, it's great for the rest of us.
Here in the U.S., yeah, we have our travel plans. So I was approached by a younger member of the family over the weekend about a possible European vacation.
Oh, we'll see you in London then.
She brought about the weakening pound and the weakening euro. So
even your daughter wants you to take her over there and knows what's going on. Well, the pound did fall below $1.20 and currently holding below there. 119.98 is the level I'm looking at. John Tucker, get those tickets. Bloomberg Daybreak from New York is up next. If you're listening on London DAB digital radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Okay, let's bring in our guests then for this hour, shall we? And cross back over to Westminster, where Scott Teal from BlackRock International, the chief fixed income strategist, joins us. And also in our Berlin studio with Markets Live FX and rate strategist Richard Jones. Very good morning to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Scott, let's begin with you. Do you think that gilts, given the backdrop today, are underpricing the risk of a UK election before the end of the year, even possibly a Labour government, a Labour coalition win? I mean, that's not out of the realms of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of cross currents that are obviously very important. First is that fall in British confidence, right, in business confidence has been remarkable. And, to some degree, should the outcome be a no-deal Brexit, then that would crystallize, those concerns, right? And so we've seen a rally in gilts
I'm Captain Obvious, and every day people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like. A hate like is when you like Becky's picture of another waterfall even though you kind of hate it because she's there and you're on the train next to a mouth breather. Don't hate like Becky's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com and get a reward night on thousands of properties. Hotels.com. Be there, do that, get rewarded.
Excludes package bookings and bookings using discount codes. Eligible hotels only. Reward night worth average price of previous 10. Taxes and fees payable. 18 plus. Rewards members only. See website for T's and C's.
LinkedIn Learning offers more than 14,000 online courses to help you achieve your goals. Its short video tutorials cover business, technology, and creative skills employers look for at every level, all taught by real-world industry experts. And new courses are added every week. Plus, LinkedIn Learning is personalized, recommending courses based on your interests and skills. Start your free trial at linkedinlearning.com. Cancel within the first month to avoid any charges.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try Click and Collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try Click and Collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things. Strings and things and strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings and
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called Strings and Things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
strings and things.
Make sure you're uni-ready with our huge range of practical essentials and home-from-home comforts and get 10% off for a limited time. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Dunelm, the home of home.
Stocks and months futures are falling right now. New tariffs hitting over the weekend, and the two sides can't even agree on when to hold the next talks. The UK in crisis, its currency falling as Britain faces what could be its third election in less than 5 years. Hong Kong on edge, the city weighing a possible state of emergency after a weekend of violent clashes. A C-suite shakeup at Mideast oil giant Saudi Aramco. All this ahead of what may become the biggest IPO in the history of the world. And tragedy in the Bahamas. Hurricane Dorian is still pummeling the islands as coastal U.S. states all prepare for the worst. We have a live report coming up from the region. It is Tuesday, September 3rd, and Worldwide Exchange begins right now. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome from wherever in the world that you may be watching. I am Brian Sullivan. Thanks for tuning in to Worldwide Exchange. Live on your screen right now is Hurricane Dorian. The monster storm simply will not move. It is still sitting over the Bahamas after doing incredible damage over the weekend. All this as Virginia, Florida, Georgia, South, and North Carolina have all declared states of emergency. We'll give you much more on Dorian coming up in a few minutes. In the meantime, here's how your money and the global markets are setting up their Tuesday. After coming off one of the best weeks of the year last week, a very different story today. Futures, they are down right now 189 points. All this as the latest round of U.S. and China imposed tariffs taking place over the weekend, and Beijing filing a complaint with the World Trade Organization. Now, as futures fall, bond yields, they are down fractionally again, but down they are. The benchmark 10-year yield at 1.48%. That is a negative real yield effectively. In other words, if you get this income and you factor in the rate of inflation, you're actually going to be paid less than zero, given inflation's impact on that income. Pretty incredible stuff in the bond market. Well, beyond trade, the other big market story this morning coming out of the United Kingdom, where a political crisis quickly turning into a currency crisis. The pound sagging below $1.20. That is the lowest level in 3 years. Opponents of Prime Minister Boris Johnson want to pass legislation this week to try to force him to seek a 3-month delay to the UK's planned exit from the European Union. But if that happens, Johnson has indicated that he would take steps to hold another early election, the third in 5 years. Much more on that story as well coming up. With us all now to try to make sense of everything that's going on in the world is Dory Wiley. He is CEO of Commerce Street Capital. And Dory, I think to be a money manager today, just go out and find good investments for your clients. You almost have to be a geopolitical strategist. What are you most focused on with your team there at Commerce Street?
Well, safety is the first thing that we are trying to focus on. We like a return of money versus on money, it seems like in this environment. But there's still plenty of great places to invest. You just have to be picky and a little bit wary and a little bit understanding of where you think the market might go this fall.
And where do you think it will go this fall, Dory?
You know, I think it's going to have a sideways to downward bias. We've got pressure coming from the UK. There's nothing positive that's going to come out of there until Brexit. And the market hates uncertainty. We know that. And all we know is it's going to get more uncertain through October. On China, same way. You look over the weekend, we've had over 1,100 people arrested so far in Hong Kong. That situation is going to get worse before it gets better. The trade situation is going to get worse before it gets better. So that's going to have a downward bias through the fall as well. In addition to, we seem to have some negative numbers coming on the economy as far as global uncertainty. Manufacturing's down, GDP's down, slight inversion of the yield curve. We've got a priced-in cut on rates. So there's enough downward bias here to make sure that you need to pick and choose where you want to be hiding out right now, which I think right now, you know, blue chip stocks with the yield is a better place to be than probably the bond market.
You know, Jim Cramer said so. We were in Hong Kong a couple of weeks ago. We understand the tariff story, right? A direct impact on the U.S. consumer. Do you believe the unrest, the images, the disturbing images coming from Hong Kong are impacting the U.S. markets in some way?
I don't think the Hong Kong factor has been factored in yet. I think that's been very underrated, and that's going to play into Trump's hands because as this turns violent, that's going to make it very difficult for people like Nike and these companies to come and pressure Trump. He's going to say, well, go change your supply lines. This is a communist country, and they have a human rights issue. This is also going to play into world sentiment on our side as well, and it'll make it very difficult for political opposition against Trump. So I think all this is playing into his favor and should work out pretty good.
You know, we're going to talk about gold a bit later on in the show, Dory. Are you one of these people that is buying gold, finding gold as a relative safe haven, maybe buying treasuries with a yield at 1.48% on the 10-year? Somebody's buying.
You know, gold has always been a trade for me. That's sort of like a end of the world type trade. You know, let's buy this in case everything gets really, really bad. The problem is, how do you get out and what do you do with it? But gold also should be a hedge against inflation, right? And I'm not seeing a lot of inflation out there, so no, I'm not buying gold right now.
Would you buy stocks ahead of an expected Fed rate cut in September?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of these look really well. I like AT&T right here. Their numbers have come out really well. They're pushing a really nice yield of 6%. They've reduced their debt from $180 billion down to $169 billion. They're on target for $150 billion. Their new content coming out this spring. The acquisition's going very well, and they've got very little exposure to China. Nice yield, nice company. I feel good about Walmart and Target. Those are momentum plays. They're not necessarily cheap, but they're both doing very well. And I still love the banks right here. There's a lot of them with really, really good yields. And you can move into the regionals. A Regions looks good. A Key Bank looks really good. You can move into PacWest, which has got a 7% yield. Nice bank there. Texas, Cullen-Frost is a nice yield and nice forward earnings multiple on some of these banks.
We like it. Some actionable ideas, some real-world names from Dory Wiley of Commerce Street Capital. Dory, a real pleasure. We'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
You bet. Have a good day.
All right, now to the story moving markets, one we just talked about, the continued unrest in Hong Kong. Over the weekend, the most violent protests and police response the world has yet seen. This is city officials' way declaring a state of emergency for the island. NBC's Chris Livesay joining us now live from Hong Kong. Chris.
That's right, Brian. We are now in week 13 of the anti-government protests here in Hong Kong, and they only appear to be getting more violent. Over the weekend, we witnessed pitched battles between police who had banned major demonstrations here and protesters who defied those banned and turned out by the tens of thousands. First very peacefully, but then things got ugly. Some of them threw bricks and bars, even Molotov cocktails. Police who responded with a volley of tear gas and a water cannon, and something we hadn't seen before, blew dye in the water in order to identify protesters afterwards. Things got even uglier later that evening when police chased a group of protesters down into a subway car, hit them with pepper spray, their clubs, and then some of them were even innocent bystanders. That's according to Amnesty International, who is looking into this right now. All of this with a very ominous message coming out of Beijing from the state media organization there, Xinhua, saying that, quote, the end is near for these protests. However, they didn't say exactly how these protests are going to come to an end. And now everyone here is hoping that that doesn't mean China is about to resort to drastic measures. Meanwhile, protesters are still out on the streets by the thousands right now in front of the central government of Hong Kong. Brian?
You know, Chris, when you're there, can you get around? I mean, I know there were some metro stops that were stopped by protests and by the police response. There was an attempt to either shut down or disrupt business at the airport. Is it possible to do, I hate to use the term business as usual, but could you get to work during the day?
It's certainly more complicated than it used to be, and that's the plan on the part of these protesters, to make life more difficult for business, to disrupt things. That's their goal, to get the attention of the government here in Hong Kong and to get the government of Hong Kong to pay less attention to pressure coming out of Beijing. Brian?
Chris Livesay in Hong Kong. Chris, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, when we come back here in Worldwide Exchange, the latest on the slow-moving Hurricane Dorian as it continues to pummel the Bahamas. Now coastal U.S. states are bracing for the worst. A live report next. Then, crisis in the U.K. Prime Minister Boris Johnson issuing a Brexit ultimatum. And later, a major shakeup at Mideast oil giant Saudi Aramco as the king's son instills a top ally at the top of the world's biggest company. RBC's Halima Croft here to weigh in. A very busy hour still ahead as Worldwide Exchange returns.
Every day, visionaries are creating the future.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
At Romans, you can rent your next home from just £36, plus your first month's rent. No deposit.
No problem.
Romans, your trusted local property experts at romans.co.uk. Conditions and monthly fee apply.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the? Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
And welcome back. 5 states are now under a state of emergency as Hurricane Dorian continues to simply batter the Bahamas. NBC's Jay Gray joining us now live from Savannah, Georgia, with more on what is an incredibly powerful and slow-moving storm. Jay.
That should be good. Yeah, Brian, and I think that slow-moving part is what is frustrating a lot of people now. You got to feel for the Bahamas and the people there suffering through this for more than a day at this point. We are in Savannah, right in the middle of the forecast cone. What we are looking at is this storm just not moving at this point. So it's just slowly inching, but will take aim at the U.S. coast at some point. Now, the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center says that will happen sometime a bit later this morning when it should begin to move a bit more in earnest. Once it does, no landfall expected, at least not early in its path. It will basically just shadow the coast. Florida already feeling some of the effects will get more intense. And then if it continues on this current path, we should see the storm sometime late Wednesday into Thursday morning just off the coast here. Some areas will still see hurricane force winds. Also, they will get some of that storm surge and, of course, the rain that will combine to cause some flooding along the coast. Right now, it looks like the storm is just going to continue to inch along. Could make landfall in North Carolina at some point late in the week, though that's not very clear either, Brian. It's just been such an unpredictable storm, and right now, just not moving.
Images over the weekend, Jay, where some states had set both lanes of an interstate going out of town. In other words, the police have said, okay, there's no going in to some of these places. We're going to open up all the interstates to one directional traffic. Are you seeing people leaving the area where you are, the other coastal areas near you?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. We've seen people leaving, moving to higher ground. That's been the case here as well. The evacuations will continue today. Everything pretty much shut down here. Everyone cooperating except Dorian.
Jay Gray in Savannah, Georgia. Jay, we appreciate you being there. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, on deck, a Brexit showdown. Will the UK have its 3rd election in under 5 years? Prime Minister Boris Johnson digging in. And $2.9 trillion. The U.S. government says that's how much insured property is vulnerable to a hurricane in New York. Florida, the same, as Hurricane Dorian sets its slow-moving eye on the southeast. We're back right after this.
Moving from one rental home to another is so expensive.
Last time, we had to pay hundreds to move in, the first month's rent,
and then a big deposit.
With Romans, it doesn't have to be like this.
It doesn't.
At Romans, you really can move in from just £36, plus your first month's rent.
And that's it.
Nothing more to add. Move in from just £36, plus your first month's rent. With Romans.
No deposit.
No problem.
Romans, your trusted local property experts at romans.co.uk. Conditions and monthly fee apply.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Cause this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the? Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things. Strings and things and strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings and
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
Strings and things. All right, welcome back. It is 5:18 here in the United States, 10:18 in the morning in London, England, where we just showed you Dow futures. They are down 168 points right now. And in the meantime, both sides are digging in politically in the UK. The casualty, maybe the economy, and the currency. Willem Marx joining us now from London with more on a situation, Willem, I think it's fair to say, can at times seem more fiction than fact.
Well, certainly stranger than potentially fiction. What we're seeing at the moment is yet more pressure on the Brexit centre here in the Parliament behind me, more and more polarisation, Brian. Essentially what's happened over the last few days is that members of Boris Johnson's Conservative Party have said they are prepared to vote against the government now that Parliament's come back from its summer break. And what they'd like to vote through is some legislation today that would try to block the possibility of a no-deal Brexit. Now, Boris Johnson, as the new Prime Minister for the last 5 weeks, has said that having that as a credible threat is the only way that he sees his negotiating team in Brussels getting a better deal out of the European Union, or at least a withdrawal agreement, a deal that Parliament could be happy with and that he would be happy with, and that if members of his own party seek to chop that possibility out of the picture, then it's going to be very difficult for him to remain as Prime Minister and might therefore end up in a new general election. This legislation expected to be introduced today. The government essentially saying, if you vote against it, if we lose on this legislation, we will treat that as what they call a confidence vote, essentially meaning they'll be preparing for elections potentially as soon as mid-October, Brian.
Boris Johnson seems to be playing with political fire, because I seem to remember, Willem, not too long ago, that calling an election did not turn out well for the incumbent.
Your memory spans at least 2 years then, Brian, because you're right, absolutely right. Theresa May, as his predecessor, didn't do too well. She lost her majority. And based on the polls that we're seeing right now, the latest poll of polls at the end of August shows the Conservatives with just 33%. They've lost support to the one-issue Brexit party that sprang up earlier this year. And if they went to the polls, one of the concerns for Boris Johnson would be to stave off that threat from the right. The opposition parties, they're at 19 and 23, the two larger parties here in the UK, and together that means a far more fragmented landscape than even today. So although Boris Johnson is struggling with his single-person majority inside the building behind me, it could get worse were he to call an election and then not succeed in that vote.
Willem Marx, live in London. Willem, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, on deck, China fears rattling markets and your money yet again. Futures, they are down 181. Bond yields falling again as well. But maybe forget stocks for a moment, while your next guest says that gold's winning streak maybe only the beginning. All that glitters is coming up right after this.
ServiceNow put our workflows in the cloud. This changes everything.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things. Strings and things and strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings and
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
Strings and things.
I didn't choose you, you chose me. When you broke from the crowd and pawed at my knee, soon you'll be feeling right at home. You'll be a bit unsure, but you're free to roam. What's good to chew? What's nice to nibble? Wet food, dry food, tin food, kibble? You might sometimes be cheeky, not always wise, but I know I found love in those puppy dog eyes. Join the free VIP Puppy Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/puppy club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
All right, welcome back. More now on the terrible tragedy off the California coast, as the Coast Guard says that more victims have been found in the diving boat fire from the weekend. More now on that and the rest of your top world and national headlines with Frances Rivera in New York. Frances.
All right, Brian, good morning to you. We start with panic overnight at Newark Liberty Airport in New Jersey. Between 150 and 200 passengers fled Terminal A after they were told to evacuate by airline attendants. According to Port Authority officials, a flight attendant with Alaska Airlines became alarmed after speaking with two men at a gate. The airport eventually sent out a tweet saying there was no threat. Travelers were soon able to return to the terminal to begin searching for their luggage. A Port Authority spokesman says the two men are being questioned, as well as a flight attendant who triggered the alarm. Tragedy striking in Southern California. That story you were just talking about. Dozens of people are feared dead following a dive boat fire off the coast near Santa Cruz Island. So far, at least 8 bodies have been located, but authorities worry the death toll could climb to 34. 33 passengers and 1 crew were trapped below deck. 5 crew members awake on the upper deck jumped overboard to escape the flames. They used a dinghy to reach another boat for help. Now to the U.S. Open, where reigning singles champ on the men's and women's sides have both been eliminated after Novak Djokovic's bad shoulder forced him out Sunday. Naomi Osaka battled an injury of her own. She couldn't overcome a hurt knee and was upset by 13-seeded Belinda Bencic, 75-64. And Brian, those are your headlines for this Tuesday.
All right, Francis, thank you very much. When we come back here on Worldwide Exchange, trade tensions and Hong Kong violence set to hit stock. Futures are down 180 right now. We'll have a live report on the economic impact of the trade war live from China coming up. And then, are we going to talk ourselves into a recession in an otherwise pretty healthy economy? Your next guest says we might. And later, a huge shakeup at the world's biggest company, or the King's son instills an ally at the top, Saudi Aramco. RBC's Halima Croft is here.
It's a pretty good crowd.
The
S&P 500, the benchmark.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
From the moment I saw you, the last of the litter, I knew you were the one, and we'd soon hear the pitter-patter of tiny paws on our kitchen floor and tiny scratches on the bedroom door. You might sometimes be mischievous, sometimes be shy, but I know I found love in those kitten cat eyes. Join the free VIP Kitten Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/kitten club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Bracing for a sell-off on a Tuesday morning. Dow futures are down 225 points right now. The latest round of tit-for-tat tariffs taking hold over the weekend. The UK in political crisis. The pound falling to its lowest level in nearly 3 years as Boris Johnson issues a Brexit ultimatum. And Saudi Aramco's shakeup, why its chairman is out and an ally of the king is in. It is Tuesday, September 3rd, and you're watching Worldwide Exchange right here on CNBC. September, at least from a business perspective. Happy Tuesday. Thanks for being with us here on CNBC. I am Brian Sullivan. We had a pretty good week for stocks last week, one of the best in months, one of the best of the year, but it's not looking like that forward momentum is going to carry over. We saw continued violence and increased protests in Hong Kong over the weekend, new tariffs taking hold, and that is taking a hit at stock futures. Dow futures right now, they are off 210 points, and once again, as stocks sell, bonds get bought. We've got a negative real yield on the 10-year note. What does that mean? Well, look at that. The yield at 1.48%, about the level of inflation. So what that means is that as you get that income, 1.5%, you're basically getting wiped out by inflation. In other words, zero real return on your bond investment money. All right, we'll get back to the markets, of course, and your money in a moment. The other big story this morning, it's coming out of the United Kingdom. We're watching the pound fall as the Brexit drama continues. The British pound below $1.20. That's its lowest level against the dollar since October of 2016. Opponents of Prime Minister Boris Johnson want to pass legislation this week to force him to seek a 3-month delay in the planned exit from the EU. But if that happens, Johnson has said he would take steps to hold an early election, another one. Could be the third presidential election effectively in the UK in 5 years. Can you imagine if that happened here? Much more in that story coming up. Now, let's talk about the issue that is moving markets, trade. Because the latest round of U.S. and Chinese imposed tariffs taking place over the weekend. China now issuing also an official complaint against the United States with the World Trade Organization. Eunice Yoon on the ground in China with a look at some of the impacts that this trade war is having. Eunice.
Thanks so much, Brian. Well, I'm coming to you from a town called Yiwu, which is a town where there is Christmas 365 days of the year. This is a northeastern Chinese city, and roughly half of the world's Christmas decorations and crafts are made and shipped out from this town. So the people here have been saying that they have been concerned about the tariffs. It's created a lot of uncertainty, but for the most part, they tell me that the Christmas industry has been spared. But what they are worried about are the orders for next year, because the tariffs kicked in over the weekend, and they're eyeing those tariffs coming in place in December as well. So they're concerned. So from what I've gathered here, the orders, for the most part, they say, for this Christmas were down about 2 to 3%. Next year, they're anticipating, though, that those orders could be down at least by 10%. And this is a low-margin business in the Christmas industry. So they're saying that they have to find other ways in order to survive. But the way that they're surviving might not be what you would expect, because unlike what we've been hearing, a lot of the manufacturers here say that it's really not an option yet for them to move production outside of this country, that the infrastructure is not there yet, and also a lot of the raw materials. So for the most part, they're looking inland, that over the next couple of years, because of this confrontation with the U.S., that they might have to start moving some of their facilities to places in inner, more rural areas within China that could be about even as much of a tenth of the cost from what they see here. Another option that they've been eyeing for the most part, Brian, is selling to other customers. They said that they're looking at the Middle East as well as Pakistan, Southeast Asia, places that don't traditionally always celebrate Christmas, but they're looking for new customers in order to try to offset some of the losses that they anticipate from the United States. Brian?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily think of those as Christmas markets necessarily. That said, are these manufacturers able to reduce their cost by 90%, 1/10 the cost by moving inland? I got to imagine that the conditions in those factories, from a human perspective, let's say, would probably not be ideal.
Well, they were telling me that when they looked just at the land alone, when you compare in this town, which is actually in a wealthier part of China compared to some of the parts of China where the place is a little bit more rural, they said that they could, for the most part, cut their costs by 1/10. Wow. Just based on the land. And then if you look at labor, it's also significantly less in some of these areas. So that's really where they're looking. But for the short term, they are concerned about how they're going to work out some of the tariffs with their customers in the United States. One of them, who we spoke to, said that Walmart is a major customer for them, and that they're looking to try to work out how much of the tariff they can eat. Some of the manufacturers here say that they could eat maybe 3 to 5% of the tariff, but it is a low margin business, so it's tough for them, and they do have these long-standing relationships, and they said that a lot of their U.S. Customers understand that, and so because of that are talking about passing the cost onto the U.S. customer instead.
Well, it is very interesting nonetheless to see where a lot of our Christmas ornaments come from. When I think of Christmas, I think of Yiwu, China. And Eunice, let me be the first one to say Merry Christmas to you. It's September 3rd, after all. It's fair game. Eunice, we'll talk soon. Well, those tariffs expected to hit American retailers and shoppers as well, because this round jumps taxes on consumer goods, the stuff that you and I buy every day, especially back to school and, yes, Christmas and holiday time. Joining us now is Rick Helfenbein. He's president and CEO of the American Apparel and Footwear Association. I mean, you saw Eunice's report. I mean, even the Chinese manufacturers, even the low-cost manufacturers are trying to get lower cost. Is that going to mitigate the impact at the store, or are we going to be paying more for the stuff we buy here in a few days, weeks, or months?
Brian, you're correct. Christmas has come early this year, but not necessarily in a good way. Saturday night at midnight, we had the kick-in of what we call the Cinderella tax. Our beautiful clothes for the holiday season have now turned into rags. We are very upset with the administration. We have talked to them at length. We have begged them on our hands and knees, please stay away from the American consumer. You know, you want to have an issue with China, you want to have some discussion, you want to improve intellectual property, transfer of technology, that's great, but stay away from the American consumer. We have testified. I personally have testified twice. They're not listening. They are not listening. The president is, shall we say, on the bandwagon, and he is hell-bent on putting tariffs on us. And we got hit.
Do you think, Rick, there's a feeling in Congress, and I know you can't speak for everybody in Congress, but do you think there's a feeling that either A, the impact won't be as serious as some retailers are sort of screaming that it might be, or B, the American economy and the consumer is strong enough to withstand any kind of a price impact?
You know, Congress has been, in our opinion, a little too low profile on this. We think they should speak louder. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution says that Congress has the power. However, they outsourced it to the administration, and the administration has been wielding it as a sword against us. It is quite painful for us. And you know what, Brian? You know what the killer in this is? We're now looking at tariffs on $550 billion worth of goods coming in from China. Divide that by 365, divide that by 24 hours, divide that by 60. It's $1 million a minute.
$1 million a minute.
$1 million a minute, going to be tariffed at 25% or 15%, and you think the American consumer is not going to notice?
Well, how much of that is going to be eaten by us versus the retailer itself, maybe versus the supplier in China? Because if you share the pain, it does mitigate it at least at every level, no?
Look, this morning the renminbi hit, I think it was 7.18.
It's weakening. The Chinese currency continues to weaken.
But when I bought goods from China, I always bought them in dollars, so that didn't affect me at all. And we're all going to try and share the pain. We're all good Americans. We all try and do the right thing, but we can't withstand this. It has to get passed on to the American consumer. American consumer will pay for it, and when they pay for it, prices go up, sales go down, jobs get lost. And that's why we worry about the R word, sipping in.
Yeah, well, the recession, right, which, you know, we're to have a guest coming on in a few minutes who thinks we could talk ourselves into a recession. Very quickly, you mentioned Congress. Do you think there's a possibility that Congress could wrest this power away from the president and reverse these tariffs on its own if it really wanted to do that? Does it have the power to do that?
If they dig deep enough, they have the power. I have talked to many members of Congress. I think on steel and aluminum, they would be willing to do something. On tariffs such as these, I don't think the will is there. I wish it was there, but I don't think it's there.
But at least the power does exist. If things got too bad, Congress could potentially jump in?
We would hope they would jump in. We've seen no activity in that direction.
Okay. Rick Helfenbein, a pleasure to have you on, Rick. Thank you very much. All right, let's turn now our attention to something entirely different. Investors, they continue to buy up what they perceive as safe havens amid rising global risks. Take a look at none other than gold. It is trading just off 6-year highs, coming off a fourth straight positive month. It is up more than 7% in August, 22% in just 90 days. Bring in now Suki Cooper, Executive Director of Precious Metals Research at Standard Chartered. Suki, welcome. I'm not going to ask you about tariffs. Don't worry about that. Who's buying gold? Where is this strength coming from?
Gold does well when we see a broad universe of investors in the space. And so far, we've seen tactical investors buying, we've seen ETP investors buying.
What's an ETP investor?
An exchange-traded product. So it could be equity-backed or debt-backed. And ETF flows have risen to levels that are just 100 tons shy of the all-time highs that we saw at the back end of 2012. So we're starting to see a broad range of investors coming into the space, but not everyone is invested in gold just yet.
But why are they buying gold? We've been here before. It didn't end well for gold. Will it have a happier ending this time, Suki?
We've seen a raft of fear factors driving the gold momentum so far, and gold's safe haven appeal has come back into play. For much of last year, when we saw escalation in trade tensions, it wasn't enough to get investors interested in gold again. But this year, it's become a much broader issue. The concerns of recession have really buoyed gold interest, and of course, the growing negative yielding debt on a global basis.
Yeah, is that the big deal here, the 15, 16 trillion in negative yielding debt? As I pointed out, we've got a basically negative real yield on our 10-year note now, and the income you get is below the cost of inflation, so the money you get is going to actually be worth less than zero. How much is that impacting not just gold, but platinum, palladium, silver, other metals?
I'd say it's perhaps been the key factor behind the gold rally. This rally has not been driven by dollar weaknesses, which is what we've seen in the past, and it's perhaps the reason why the gold rally has more legs this time as well. Not only are there a vast array of factors supporting gold, but negative yielding debt is expanding that universe to investors who are coming back into the space.
How long do you think gold can maintain this? You sound very optimistic. Is this a long-term trade?
There are some drags in the gold price. Of course, the physical market has suffered as prices have rallied, particularly in India and China. But central banks remain net buyers, and the broader macro environment still remains supportive. We do expect the Fed to cut by 25 basis points in September and again in December, and we think that's going to keep investors turning back to gold. But in the near term, we would expect gold prices to consolidate. At least that will be healthy for the rally going forward.
A little bit of a pullback on the short-term horizon. Has Bitcoin